There was a city. No one quite remembers its name, though maps tried valiantly to label it, that behaved unlike any city ever built. A place of angular alleyways and grand boulevards, of iron cathedrals and glass towers. It was known best for one singular, unexplainable trait. Each morning, its buildings were never where they had been the night before. At dusk, the city seemed ordinary. Its lamps flickered on in predictable rows. Markets closed. Windows glowed with the warm breath of dinners being served, and the hush of sleep crept into its narrow lanes. But in the hush of midnight, a quiet shiver stirred beneath the cobblestones. It began subtly, a mailbox quivering, a park bench slightly askew. Then the shifting commenced. Skyscrapers glided soundlessly through the mist like colossal icebergs. Tiny cottages pirouetted in flower-lined arcs. The museum once woke to find itself mirrored perfectly by the opera house, staring across a square that hadn't existed the day before. Street names scrambled themselves in loops, cul-de-sacs bent into figure eights, and whole districts danced to a rhythm only the city itself seemed to understand. No one ever saw it happen. There were no tremors, no cracks in the roads. The plumbing always reconnected. Power lines always reattached. Somehow, impossibly, everything functioned. Only the layout refused to obey. The people who lived there, if they could be called that, did not resist the change. They learned to navigate anew each day, to leave extra time for a commute that might end in a river or a rooftop. Children played games of memory in the ever-morphing playgrounds. Lovers made dates not at fixed places but at fixed times, knowing that fate would decide whether their paths would cross. Cartographers came and went. Some went mad trying to chart the city. Others abandoned maps entirely, choosing instead to record the city as a piece of music, as if each structure's position was but a note in some eternal, unplayed symphony. Philosophers mused that the city was alive, dreaming, perhaps, or remembering itself in pieces. There were stories, of course. Myths whispered in quiet corners that the city was cursed by a forgotten architect who sought perfection and was never satisfied. That it was built atop the spine of an ancient slumbering beast. That it was not a city at all, but a question made of stone. And each rearrangement was a new way of asking. Sometimes buildings disappeared altogether. A bakery that had stood for 100 years might be gone in the morning, replaced by a library or a hollow shell of nothing. Then, weeks later, the bakery might return in a different quadrant, its oven still warm, its shelves stocked with bread that no one remembered baking. No one ever left the city permanently. No roads led out. Trains arrived, but no tickets were ever sold to leave. In time, people ceased to ask why. The city shifted, and they shifted with it. Their memories bent like the streets. Their hearts grew attuned to the rhythm. They lived lives without anchors, trusting the dawn to reveal the new arrangement, embracing the strange choreography of a place that refused to settle. The city wandered, it danced, and the world outside, unchanging, rigid, forgetful, could do nothing but watch in awe or look away. As the years passed, or what passed for years in a place where calendars lost their shape, the city's shifting became more complex, more deliberate. It was as if it had grown bolder in its dreaming. A cathedral once found itself inverted, its great rose windows sunken into the ground, petals of stained glass catching subterranean light. One morning, the sea arrived. It hadn't been there before. Where once stood the grand station, tides now lapped against stone steps, and gulls circled the domes of flooded banks. For a while, gondolas replaced trams, and bridges bloomed like vines. Then, as unpredictably as it had come, the sea vanished, leaving behind salt-stained lampposts and whispers of tide in the air. Historians, what few remained, began to suspect that the city was not only shifting itself, but time within it. They spoke cautiously of echo days, when a building would appear twice in 1 week, not as a copy, but as its former self. The old library burned in a fire no one remembered, once reappeared whole, its shelves lined with books no one had written yet. A theater showed plays in dead languages. A school once welcomed children who hadn't been born. Dreams, too, were affected. Entire neighborhoods shared the same dreams. Once thousands woke with the image of a tower spiraling into the sky with no end. When they looked out their windows, there it was, thin as a hair vanishing into the clouds. The tower stayed for 3 days. No doors, no windows, no shadow, and then it was gone. People began to suspect that the city responded to them, not to their needs, but to something deeper, regret perhaps, longing, memory. One woman whispered her childhood address into the fog, and by morning the house had returned, untouched by time. Others tried and failed. Some got fragments, a window here, a scent there. The city gave, but not to all, and never the same way twice. It was not a place of logic, but of resonance. Visitors sometimes found their way in. Wanderers, dreamers, or those who simply stepped off the edge of a map. Some stayed, adapting to the shifting rhythm. Others tried to escape, but found that exits bent back into the city. A man once walked west for 3 days and arrived back where he started. Though his shoes were torn, and the sky above him had changed constellations. And still the city evolved. Gardens began appearing on rooftops that had never hosted soil. Statues turned to face new directions each day, slowly assembling stories across plazas. Once every mirror in the city showed a different version of the same street, until someone walked into one and did not return. There were theories. Always theories. Some claimed the city was a bridge, between what and what no one knew. Others believed it was sentient, a slow-breathing mind made of mortar and intention, trying to remember something it had once been. The architect's ghost became a local legend. Figure seen only in reflections, sketching on invisible parchment. Some said the city was a test. Others said it was a mistake. But the city never answered. It only rearranged. Every morning brought the thrill of uncertainty. Children played games to guess where their schools might appear. Lovers sent messages into the wind, hoping they'd be caught and carried to the right balcony. Cemeteries moved too, always intact, always just out of reach of yesterday's morning. People adapted not out of necessity but reverence. The city did not demand worship, it invited surrender. Then one morning the city didn't move. Buildings held their places. Streets remained fixed. The sun rose in familiar arcs and everything was as it had been the day before. And the day after that. And the day after that. At first, people celebrated. They embraced certainty like an old friend. They made appointments, drew maps, built fences. But then came the unease. The city no longer sang in their dreams. The echo had gone. Gardens wilted. The air grew heavy with silence. No one could explain it, but the stillness began to feel wrong. Like a held breath, like something had ended. And then, without warning, one night, it moved again. Not subtly, not with grace, but with a roar. Buildings tore across the horizon like comets. Streets curled like paper. Towers burst from underground like roots growing in reverse. The sky itself seemed to bend. For a moment, just a moment, everything flickered. And then it settled. A new city, a new shape, a silence. And then slowly life resumed. No one spoke of the pause. Not openly, but from that day on, they began to leave offerings, scraps of poetry, fragments of dreams, hand-drawn maps that led nowhere. Not out of fear, but gratitude. For in that flicker, they had glimpsed something behind the city. Not a hand, not a plan, but a vast, unknowable awareness. Not watching them, but listening. The city did not need them. But perhaps in some small way it cared. And so it wandered. And so they wandered with it, forever changing, forever home.
If you enjoyed this short story and would like to see more, please subscribe to the channel and feel free to leave a suggestion in the comments.